Well, hiya listeners, welcome to Wiggly Podcast number 18. I'm introducing this podcast because Heather's got a bit of a lisp today. She's got a bad tooth. So she's still able to giggle a little bit, I think. She's just as well.
Here is my lisp. It's not that bad, you know.
What are we going to talk about this week?
We're going to talk about my tooth.
Right.
No, we're not.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about you making a marsh.
Yeah.
And I can see progress happening out there now if I just lift my head and peek out of the window.
Yeah.
We're going to have Plant of the Week, which we talked about last week, but is this week.
Right.
And it's a corker.
Right.
Hazel.
That's right, yeah, it's brilliant, isn't it?
And lots more. But the first thing I want to talk about is Valentine's Day.
Right.
Yeah. Oh,
It's not long, is it?
not long.
Not long. Where will you be Valentine's Day? You'll be here?
I'm afraid, will I be in New York? No, I'll be
won't.
back.
You'll be back. You'll be back. So no romantic Valentine Day for you.
Yeah. Tell us what's happening on Valentine's
Well, it's
Day.
the beginning of National Bird Box Week, isn't it?
And what has that got to do with romantic evenings of candlelight?
Well, I'm not entirely sure whether birds have kind of romantic candlelit evenings. It's relatively unlikely. But apparently, according to the British Ornithological Trust, it's the traditional day where birds start mating, where they get together. They get together on St Valentine's Day.
Really?
Which is why we've got the National Bird Box
Tosh,
Week.
isn't it?
Yeah, well, probably. Yeah, probably. But it sounds good.
It sounds
anyway.
wonderful.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about Valentine's Day because the Lib Dems have been up to quite a bit lately, haven't they?
They've been up to quite a bit for a long time.
They've been very busy.
Yeah, they've just been found out recently.
They've been talking about flower miles.
Right.
Of course, that comes to the fore. It's on their minds. It's very important.
Yeah.
And they've done a wonderful press release about flower miles. I'm not political here, but even so, they've drawn attention to the fact that most of the bouquets that you and I buy for Valentine's Day have got flowers from Kenya, Uganda, Colombia, and God knows where.
Yeah.
And they've had the idea, and the Times did a really good article about it, to label bouquets with country of origin, which I think would be fantastic.
Yeah, it would. It makes perfect sense. I wonder why it isn't done already.
I don't think people have thought about
No,
it yet.
that's what it is,
We're
yeah.
only just thinking about food miles, so I think flower miles is probably the next step.
Makes perfect sense.
But if you want to read it, it's at Times Online, and it's an excellent article by the Countryside editor.
I might look at that. I haven't seen that yet.
Really good. Dear listener, I know how it is when you hear farmers on the radio. Lots of times, I'm not saying every single farmer, but many farmers come on the radio and they moan their socks off.
Yeah.
Not the other end. Wouldn't like to say that.
No.
And you immediately switch off, don't you?
Yeah, we do tend to, don't we?
Yeah, because farmers
think,
moaning
farmers.
about subsidies.
Yeah.
We're sick of it. Nobody else gets subsidies. Get on with it. Wrap up. But actually, the public are really enthusiastic supporters of farmers themselves. It's just that this whole political miasma gets in the way, doesn't it?
Yeah. I think the way farmers are portrayed in the media is generally fairly negative.
Well, I
And,
think the way that farmers portray themselves often
it is. They're
is
often
very
a bad
negative.
choice of spokespeople a lot of the time, I think.
Yeah, which is partly why Phil and I went on the Speak Out course with Leaf,
Right.
which was really interesting because it was trying to think of ways of explaining things that are happening on the farm positively but realistically.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, the trouble is that this week we can't think of how to say this positively. So, dear listener, hang on in there. We're going to limit him to 3 minutes, and it's 22 minutes past 11 here. God knows what time it is with you. Hello, California. We're going to limit him to 3 minutes of moaning in his most gentle way to explain the problem that Lord Bach has put in place this week. Moan on, Phil.
So Lord Bach and his cronies at DEFRA have been charged with modifying the way that us farmers receive our subsidies, and there are a lot of positives to be taken out of what they're doing.
Oh no, stick to the moaning, come on.
Namely, getting rid of subsidies ultimately, which is, if we can do it, what we should do. But the downside is that they have buried themselves in information and are struggling and failing, in my view, to deliver what they need to deliver. And the result is that effectively farmers in England, at any rate, are having their subsidy payments delayed by anything up to 6 months, and we don't actually know when it's going to come. And the result of this is that it's completely destroyed a lot of people's cash flows, and if they were at their limits of borrowing beforehand, they're in big trouble. And it's been suggested to me recently that even now, for every pound that the taxpayer contributes to agriculture, it costs between 60 and 70p to deliver the money to the farmer, which I think is outrageous.
So it's amazing, isn't it?
Just to go back a step, when farmers had to fill in their forms to actually get the process going, I remember there being a deadline. What happened if you didn't meet that deadline?
Every day over the deadline, you have a fixed percentage cut off your entitlement.
And now, are the government late in paying? Because as I understand it, from listening to the women's network that I'm part of, the Rural Women's Network, people were expecting their payments in December.
December has historically been the time of year when all our main payments turn up, but the government are not breaking the rules, but then the government made up most of the rules themselves. So, but the result is that we were supposed to be getting payments at the end of February, but last week they claimed to have in excess of 400,000 tasks or issues with people's applications to get through before they can start.
Good grief.
So that there's just no hope.
No, not at all. So
Toast is just joining in with this.
Yes, he can't believe it either.
With this argument or this discussion. And I must report that Toast's leg is all cured, isn't it, Toast? Good girl. The government software system seems to be the problem. They've bought a system that cost £18 million from Accenture, and now it's ended up costing 37 squillion quidders.
And it doesn't work.
I know you've been speaking to a lot of hill farmers lately. What's the news on the farmers' grapevine?
Basically, in Wales, because they've separated out the England, Scotland and Wales, in Wales have paid out 80% of the farmers' entitlements on the basis that the people needed it, and they would leave the other 20% to cure any problems that might crop up. England haven't paid anything out and don't look like paying anything out, and I don't actually know what the situation is in Scotland. But basically, as far as hill farmers are concerned, who are not enjoying life particularly business-wise, they have had their subsidy or most of it.
You're 2 minutes 50 seconds in. What did your accountant say this morning about farms?
His opinion is that he has got a number of clients who their businesses weren't very well before, and they've got so depressed about the whole thing that there's a certain amount of burying of heads in sand, and there's trouble coming for them, sadly, and it just seems so unnecessary.
Last words from you, Rich?
I've lost the words.
Well, that's dismal. From hearing how DEFRA are actually unable to spend their money, I've found out where it's going.
Right.
Yep, it's all happening. They're spending their money on suing Mrs. T. Mrs. T picks mushrooms. She's picked mushrooms for 30 years. She's picked mushrooms for the Queen, she's picked mushrooms for gourmet restaurants, and she picks them from the New Forest in the public areas. But DEFRA are out to stop it. They've banned her from picking her mushrooms. They're not going to let her pick her mushrooms. In fact, she's in court at the moment fighting them. Yeah. She wants to pick her mushrooms and they say no. Yeah. Picking mushrooms is stealing and it's a bad thing. What have you got to say about that, Ricardo?
It's pretty grim, isn't it? It really is grim. I mean, it's another classic case of wasting public money. This poor woman who's been collecting mushrooms from the New Forest for decades, and who is probably helping the spread of mushrooms, in actual fact, because it's a great way to spread mushrooms across the landscape by picking them if you pick them properly.
Well, we saw her in the paper with a picture of her mushroom basket, and you said to me, that's a good one.
Yeah, that's right. I think if you're picking mushrooms on the continent and you're using things like plastic bags, you can get prosecuted, because you're stopping the spread of spores. But if you're using one of those wicker baskets and you make sure the mushrooms are placed in the basket the right way up so the spores can flow freely across the countryside as you tear through the woods, cutting the mushrooms and various fungi. It's a brilliant way to spread them.
But Rich, have they got a case? Because if you deplete that forest of mushrooms, obviously that will be of detriment to the forest, won't it?
It could well be. Obviously the fungus are an important source, they're important decomposers in the forest ecosystem. But if you pick them properly, you are going to spread them. And it's interesting, we've got this situation in this country, you and I were talking about deer the other day, where if you have an environment, then in order to make it sustainable, then you really need to be able to get some sort of commercial value from it, don't you? So by harvesting mushrooms, for instance, and being able to sell those mushrooms, I think DEFRA have got an issue with the mushroom harvesting being for commercial purposes.
Yeah.
I think if you go into the woods and you're picking mushrooms for your own needs, then that's perfectly
That'll be okay.
That's okay. But you see, to preserve an environment purely for that reason, purely for aesthetic reasons, then really it's not that sustainable, is it? But if you make it valuable, and if you make it it's commercially viable to maintain that environment, then that's got to be better for everybody, isn't it?
Mm. Interesting. So that's where DEFRA's money's going. If you've got a comment to make, or if you've got a different point of view to put across, have a bit of a row. We had the hedgerow row, let's have the mushroom row, or the payments row, or any other row you like. Email Richard at wigglywigglers.co.uk, Heather at wigglywigglers.co.uk, or if you want to get at the real Farmer Phil, who did turn into Flowery Phil for just a moment a couple of weeks ago, email pwg@lowerblakemere.co.uk. He may not get back to you this week because he's going skiing.
The Wiggly Podcast. Let your iPod bloom.
We're going to talk about building a marsh in our garden.
So the marsh area. We're going to do things in the Wiggly Garden, aren't we?
We are.
Ready for some of our courses in the summer. Mm-hmm. We're going to create a marsh area. There's an upturned boat in the garden. I think if some people that may be listening to this have come along to the Wiggly Open Days and they'll have seen the upturned boat.
It was my brother Billy's idea of speedboat racing. He bought a boat which has a hole in it, and with the idea of renovating it, because he is a bit of a scrap heap challenge genius.
Yeah.
And of course that didn't happen. So eventually the boat has composted. And as a composted boat, he said, "Do you want it?" And I said, "Yeah." And Monty really wanted that boat.
Yeah.
So the boat's in the garden for some reason.
Right.
And
it looks cool, doesn't it?
Yeah. And Phil the gardener had a great idea.
Yeah. So he decided we should dig in a marsh area around the boat, which is quite appropriate, I guess. So what we're going to do is we're going to dig out a relatively shallow, pond-like shape, kind of, I suppose, meandering around the boat, and we'll line it with butyl. And we'll puncture the butyl. So what will happen is when we've got, out here especially, quite a good clay base at the bottom of the garden, isn't there? Mm. So it'll retain water at the beginning of the year, which will allow amphibians, frogs and whatnot to get in there and spawn. But it'll dry out progressively over the course of the summer. But it will, at the bottom of the pond, some of the moisture will stay in place. So it'll still support some of the marshy plants. It'll be a really nice feature. It'll be a nice way of showing off how a natural marsh might work and how it changes over the course of the year.
Also, so many of our plants are like marshy conditions, so we'll be planting up a whole selection of those in that area.
I mean, we've got a bunch of riparian plants around the pond at the moment, haven't we? Like
riparian?
It just means backside, doesn't it? Riparian.
Backside?
Backside.
Does
backside.
it?
You're obsessed with backsides, you.
I'm not.
Riparian, it just means bankside. Like fishery owners are called riparian owners because they own the bank's fishing rights. So there you are. And but we've got like mimulus and ragged robin and whatnot around the pond, haven't we? So some of those species will be ideal for that marshy area as well.
And we've got a pond course coming up actually, and it's nice that we've got Farmer Phil in with us to talk about it. Just give us a brief overview. On Wednesday, July the 19th, from 11 till about 3. We've got learning about ponds and pond life by comparing the 3 very different ponds here at Blakemere. So if you'd like to come along, book at Wiggly's. But tell us a little bit about that, you two. Because you've made up now, haven't you? Have you?
We didn't fall out, did we?
Oh,
I think Swampy's calmed down a bit now.
I must tell the listener, I had a bit of a row last week. I had a bit of a row about hedgerows. Yeah. And I so wished that I put Phil in the red corner, because by the end of the row, his face would have matched it a treat.
The consensus does seem to be in Phil's favour, though, doesn't it?
Yes, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So all friends together now, boys.
It's interesting we talk about the ponds, though. There's a pond. I still haven't been up there. We're going to take the folks up to a pond up in the woods as well, aren't we, Phil?
Yeah, well, it's quite interesting because we've got a whole variety of different ponds that have occurred for different reasons on the farm. I mean, we've got the pond in the garden which we built and planted, so that's quite an interesting thing in itself.
Yeah.
In the field next to the garden, we've got a glacial pond, a pond actually formed by the glacier stopping and pressing a hole in the surface of the soil.
Yeah.
I thought it was Kev that dug a hole.
No, he cleaned the silt out of it, but all up the valley between here and Hay are a whole row of these ponds where the glacier just pushed holes,
Right.
and the weight of it made these sort of dimples so that there's no outlet to it, so the water level's not static, which is why there are no bankside plants. You would normally expect rushes and so on because the water level goes up and down. And then up near the wood we've got a couple of, well, one was probably dug out as a sporting pond, a duck pond, so that's nearly silted up, so that's an interesting sort of piece of habitat in itself. And then we've got a reservoir up in the wood which obviously has a constant level but is a clay-lined pool
Right.
within the wood, so that
That provides the water, doesn't it?
it does, yeah. The farm water supply comes from that, but that doesn't. There's plenty of livestock in it, and if you drink the farm water, you have to keep your teeth together to make sure you don't get too much in there. But it tastes great.
So that's the plan, I think, isn't it? To take a host of people around to look at all these different environments. You know, they kind of created relatively sort of organised garden environment, garden pond, and then the little Golden Valley press stud, glacial cirque, and then the pond up in the woods as well. So
You're not going to be boring, are you, you two? You're not, are you?
Are we ever boring?
Don't worry, listener, I'll come and make sure if they do get boring that we move along, as I do in this podcast. Thank you very much. Do you know, we've produced so many podcasts sat in this sitting room, haven't we, Rich?
Yeah.
But next week, I'm really hoping,
Oh, yeah.
after all the ones that we've done, that finally we get out and about.
Yeah.
And where are we getting out and about?
They're not we. Wrong choice of words. Where were you going out and about?
Yes, but I've explained to you that you can link in via
Absolutely,
Skype. I don't see your problem.
And that's what we'll be doing, hopefully. In fact, I was thinking about planning. I thought, oh, gosh, there's going to be loads of planning involved. But if we spend as much time planning for that as we do for these, we should be fine.
Dear listener, I know you want to know what we're up to. Well, we're going to the New York Ritz Hotel. We're going 14 floors up to the Rise Bar, which apparently overlooks the Statue of Liberty. The Wiggly team, 6 of us, and we're going to podcast, hopefully with a New York Minute Show. And I can't wait to hear what his opinion is on the hedgerow row.
Neither can I. Well, do you know what a hedge is?
I'm not entirely sure, but he's bound to have an opinion.
I'm sure I'll have an opinion.
There's so many people still contacting us about the hedgerow row. It's incredible.
Yeah.
We've had emails, phone calls, in the pub. There's always a different point of view. It is not going to rest, Rich.
No, that's right. I think you're going to have to instigate another argument between Phil and I.
Definitely. Yeah. There's experts vying to come on the show now because of you two. Yeah. And you know what I thought? At the end of that hedgerow row, did you say to the listener what you've done in your own garden?
I don't think I did, no.
And so, Rich, do you trim your own hedges every 3 years?
No, I cut them about 3 times a year.
You naughty boy.
No, that's not strictly true.
I know you do.
I've got a mix. It depends on what the hedge needs to look like, really.
You're not hedging your bets here, are you?
I've got the luxury of having several hedges, so I can kind of leave them and leave several of them. And in actual fact, it's interesting to see how they develop, if you can compare different hedges.
Bit of wish-wash here. I think we'll have to have an investigative team round.
Yeah, that's right.
Through the keyhole at Richard's house.
Yeah. Now, I've got it's interesting because I've only been where I am for 18 months, less than 2 years anyway. And some of the hedges are a bit dilapidated and they need laying. Some of them are just full of elm and not much else. So I need to get some bits and pieces, some spindle and some dogwood and whatnot in there. But by contrast, some of the other hedges are brilliant, full of native species, packed out, studded with fruit and perfect habitat.
Any hazel?
Yeah, lots of hazel.
Oh, what a link.
The problem we have is that is when you plant things, you get loads of deer. We get loads and loads of deer that
listener,
nibble off
Shock Jock goes for the link. And what happens?
Oh, what a link, okay.
He wants to talk about deer. Go on, no, come on. What about the deer?
No, I was just going to say, when we plant something, we've got to be so careful. We've got to fence everything in because the deer nibble off the tops of everything. Rather than shoot all the deer, it's important just to fence the stuff in. And
Shoot all the deer?
Shoot them.
Oh!
Yeah. So we've got this situation where some people, local people, are really sort of anti-deer, and they seem to want to shoot them all, purely because they're affecting coppice growth and whatnot.
Oh, right, because deer come down on our farm and they certainly eat the crop,
Yeah.
but it's part of the balance of the whole area
Absolutely.
to have deer in it.
It is, yeah, it is. And they're a marketable product. If you can have your land and manage it to support deer, then, why not harvest some of those deer? Make
Very
a few quid out of them.
tasty.
Tastes great.
Going
And
back
they're,
to my link.
Yeah, go back to
yes.
the link now.
Is there any hazel in your hedge, Richard?
Yes, there's lots of hazel.
Oh, and here comes Alison. Welcome, Alison. I don't know how many you've been involved in now.
It seems quite a few, actually.
It does.
A few giggly moments.
And you've been listening in avidly, haven't you?
I have, yes. I listen in every week. It's
and
great.
what about filling his hedging?
I'm filling his hedge in. Yeah, it's a great one. I did agree that he'd have to trim his hedges every year.
Oh.
And poor old Rich, you definitely would have to get a chainsaw out, I think, for after 3 years' growth. Then again, Phil, I didn't agree with the hazel. Hazel's a great plant for a hedge. It's very flexible. It's ideal for hedging when the plant's grown up, and the Welsh farmers, they do all their hedging techniques with it because it's very flexible. It'll bend down into the hedge. So I do sell a lot of hazel to go in hedges. So,
I see.
Yeah.
Bit of defence
So there you go.
that's right,
Yeah.
In fact, you feel so strongly. What is plant of the week this week?
It is hazel.
Oh, is
yeah,
it?
So we thought that was
Oh.
quite appropriate. Yeah.
Right, pick it up
Yes,
then.
this is the
It's just
hazel.
to describe to the listener, we're in the sitting room and Alison kindly has put the twigs and branches and plants in polythene
Yeah,
just to
so-
protect the floor.
Yes. So you don't have to bring the cleaner
Safer.
back in.
It's Rian actually. Rian does a lovely job.
Oh, she does. It's
Yeah.
absolutely immaculate in here.
Thank
yeah.
you.
It won't be when I leave.
That's right.
Right, over to you, Rich.
Well, it's interesting. I know you've brought a little hazel in today, Alison, but there's not much on there, is there, at the moment? You've got a few
No,
buds.
they do grow quite vigorously. We try to keep them quite small when we're dispatching hazel, otherwise the roots grow absolutely massive and they become very heavy. Like you can imagine bundles of 25 or whatever,
Yeah.
and they're just too heavy and too big to plant as well. It'll take ages to
Yeah.
plant, so that's how we like to grow them, with a smaller root, being in a seed bed 1 year, has been undercut with a blade.
Really, it's only a year old.
So it's only a 1U1,
Yeah.
not a 1+1. It hasn't been
Right.
transplanted.
Right. How long
like-
would it take for that to get to, say, the height of a good bean stick?
Oh, well, a good bean stick, another couple of years.
Is that all?
Yeah.
So you're not very old at all then?
No.
My dad used to use hazel for his bean sticks.
Yeah, I use bean sticks
Do you?
years ago and cut. Yeah, that reminds me, actually, I've got to go and cut some now quickly before they start
Much
to...
better, I think, than
Sunrises.
Chinese bamboo.
Yeah.
You
Oh, yeah,
know those
absolutely.
bamboo, they look awful.
Well, bamboo's worth avoiding, isn't it? It's an imported product,
Yeah,
I mean, it's
but
always worth
everyone
using
doesn't. You don't think
native
about
stuff.
your bean sticks, do you? Well, you do.
No,
I do.
guess not. I'd be
But-
interested to see how many people listening to podcasts grow runner beans.
Oh,
So
God,
if
they're
you do grow
essential.
your runner beans, then
Oh,
let
I
us know.
do love runner
Oh, they're
beans.
beautiful, aren't they? So good for you. So good for you. Yeah, so hazel's the right thing to use for those. And,
Yeah, it's good for cutting out sticks out of a hedge. My grandfather always used to say, go and cut a stick out of a hedge, girl, and use it as a cow stick for gathering the cows in and that sort of thing. Not that you'd whack them or anything, just to
course not.
extend your arm, you know.
Why is it so good then? Is it because it's straight or is it because it's flexible?
It's flexible, yeah, and they are quite straight, yes.
Spring is just around the corner now. We're all sort of waiting for it with bated breath. I mean, the sooner the better for me. But one of the things that you can look out for this time of year are catkins, aren't
Yeah, catkins, the lamb's tails, that we call it.
That's right,
Close
yeah,
to lambing
yeah.
when the lamb's tails are out.
they? Yeah.
Yeah, it's the male flower
Yeah.
of the hazel.
It's interesting that there are, after a situation, lots of different plants have catkins, don't they? And Heather and I were talking about pussy willow yesterday.
I thought it was just
or
pussy
goat
willow.
willow.
Sorry.
But those are catkins as well.
Yeah.
That's the
Yes,
same way. They're the
smaller.
flowers. They're
Yeah.
the flowers, effectively. But I mean, you have them early because, of course, they wind pollinated, aren't they? So even though you've got these early flowers, they're not reliant on insects to pollinate. And like you say, generally, they're either, on each tree, they're either male or female catkins.
Yeah, that's right. The female have tiny little flowers, and you have to really look closely at the plant. It's just like a little bud, and on the end of the bud is a tiny, teeny, tiny little red bit,
Right,
and that's
right.
the actual female flower.
That's
But
amazing.
people always see the male flowers, the lamb's tails, which are
Yeah.
lovely this time.
They
of year.
are gorgeous, aren't they? There's nothing better. If you're walking through the woods and you just catch the sunset or something, or even the sunrise through the kind of misty morning, a frosty catkin, it's the most beautiful sight.
Yeah,
He's so poetic, isn't
he
he?
is, isn't he?
Do they do any good for anything, the catkins?
They do good for the nut trees.
Gather your nuts.
I've got to read out this piece to you now.
Yeah.
Now then, history and tree law. Before the Second World War, it was quite common for people to harvest hazelnuts. Like many other rural customs, this was often a communal affair with whole villages going out and about. Timing's very important. Too early and nuts will lack taste and will not store long. Too late and the jays and the squirrels will have had them all. People would take picnics and a drink of ale or cider. Nutting used to be a euphemism for courting, and this expression may originate from the fact that gathering nuts in the woods and shrubland gave lots of opportunity for making contact with the object of one's affection.
Well, surely you are making contact with one's affection if you're gathering their nuts. Michael's just put his head in his hands.
Oh, tickle me.
Yeah. I think there's all sorts of folklore, isn't there, with catkins? There's a black poplar. Do you know anything about black poplar? They're quite rare now, aren't they?
Yeah, they are quite rare.
You don't really
Yeah,
see them,
I've seen a
but
couple.
they've got...
There's one on the green at Blakemere.
Is
Black
there?
poplar.
Ah, right.
Yeah.
They've got red catkins, haven't they? And they used to be called, I think it's devil's finger, and so it was kind of bad luck to pick them.
Really?
Yeah, it's folklore.
You know, Rob's developing those trees for us that originate with a special tree. And one of those is black poplar that he's found in
Good.
wood in Shropshire.
Good.
'Cause it's quite an important...
Well, they're beautiful trees, aren't
Yeah.
they? And you don't see them.
No.
As, you know, again, as like small leaf lime and those kind of species, they're few and far between now, aren't
Yeah.
they? So, Alison, what's the best way to plant this hazel?
In with a mixed hedging pack, with like the hawthorn and blackthorn. Hazel probably comes as third most popular in the packs that we supply.
I mean, how would you best protect the nuts on the hazel plants? Because, you know, you get the situation now where we've got grey squirrels and they tend to pinch the nuts, don't they, before they're ripe. Have you got any ideas of how to... Because I haven't.
No, I mean, if you get a hazelnut before the squirrel catches it, you're quite lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
We do collect a lot, obviously, for the seed, but then when we've collected it, you've got to treat it. It goes through a period of cold treatment, then hot treatment. And then once you've sown it in the ground, it is so difficult to keep the squirrels, the mice especially, off it.
Yeah.
It has to be netted because of the pheasants, the
Right.
pigeons.
Right.
Everything loves hazelnut. And once
It's
you've
all
got
against you, isn't it?
you've got the plant, it's like hooray! But getting that plant is quite a tricky process.
I heard Robin Page, who I know Richards has invited to come on our podcast. He was on a podcast a few days ago
Was he?
talking about squirrels and the fact that the government are now going to cull grey squirrels.
Yeah.
And the interviewer, I think it was John Humphreys, said the government are going to massacre squirrels. And Robin Page explained that actually they're going to cull them because they've taken over and they spread a virus, and also they obviously cause lots of problems for red squirrels. So there's going to be controlled culling, and I think they're going to start in the Lake District. So maybe there'll be a little bit more chance for hazelnuts.
Yeah, I hope so.
It was
So-
interesting, though, didn't they? MAF did the same, though, didn't they, in the 70s? There was this big thing about shooting grey squirrels, culling grey squirrels, and they were trying to really wipe out the populations of grey squirrels. And obviously it didn't happen, did it? And again, you know, it's that kind of lack of consistency, really, across governments that policies just die out. I mean, if grey squirrels are properly controlled, it has really good implications for the countryside.
Yeah, I mean, my Uncle Bill used to control squirrels in the wood and used to get 10p for each tail of garners.
Yeah, they do.
And it actually made the wood really balanced.
Yeah.
And he was what I would call a countryman. And I think it's all about balance.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, because it is nice to see the odd one. They are quite
Absolutely.
cute, aren't they? But
Yeah, that's right.
When you spend ages and ages sowing these seeds and the germination rate becomes lesser and lesser, it's just like heartbreaking. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, well, we better go now because she's
I know.
crying.
Poor hazelnut.
She's just sobbing.
If you think that this is 2 years old, though.
Thank you, Al.
Thank you.
Mon Monty's come in for a 9-year-old's perspective on worms. Bring it on, Monty.
The Wiggly Wormcast podcast by Monty, a weekly fact on worms. The earthworm's body is a perfect vessel for soil, the perfect container for holding, transporting and transforming soil.
Thanks, Monty. That was great.
Well, Rich, time to end another podcast show.
Yeah, we've had another laugh, haven't we?
Yeah, we have. Even if the listeners don't enjoy it, we do.
Yeah, that's right. That's the most important thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Fun in the sitting room at Wiggly Wigglers for one more week. Now, somebody came to us with a great idea yesterday. Why don't we get the listeners to talk to us from their gardens?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be great to hear if they've got a worm composting kit or if they're natural gardening in some way or something that they found out about feeding the birds? So, if you're listening in and you fancy coming on the Wiggly Podcast, email us. Heather@wigglyWigglers.co.uk,
Richard at wigglyWigglers.co.uk.
Farmer Phil at pwg@lowerblakemere.co.uk. And we'll be very pleased to hear from you. So until next week, bye!
Bye.